this border war. Fans called it Moonshine Throwdown. I think that's the best rivalry name, an unofficial name, but the best rivalry name I've come across.
Yeah, unofficial that should become official soon enough.
Embrace it.
5 receivers at Duncan's disposal. Duncan stepping up. Hit! Ball is loose!
Big call here.
Marshall thinks they have it. And the Herd do!
Here's the kickoff from Amaretto Curry to the Hilltoppers, and we are underway. And a fake reverse on the kick return. And here comes Townsend down the left sideline. What a way to start it for Western Kentucky on the road. And it is an opening touchdown return. And just like that, the Hilltoppers strike first.
Justin Rohrwasser to try to win it for Marshall from 53 yards out. It's got the leg. It is good! And the perfect season continues for Justin Rohrwasser.
Go for 2. Going for the win. Western Kentucky going for the victory. Rolling to his right. Quick strike. And they did it! Western Kentucky has ended the perfect season into the hands of Willie McNeil. A shocker here in West Virginia. And it is over for Marshall. They end the regular season 11-1.
Welcome back to the Moonshine Throwdown podcast. It's been a little bit since we've been able to link up and record ourselves an episode for these Western Kentucky. Let's call them I don't know what to call them now. New look Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. It's a different flavor. It's an extra flavor. It's not a different flavor. It's an added flavor to this football team. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, it's a defensive juggernaut. At least what they put on a show against Middle Tennessee in the 100 Miles of Hate this past weekend. We were unable, of course, to make our schedules line out in order to bring you a preview of that game. But I think if we would have recorded a preview, it wouldn't have been anywhere near exactly what happened in this game because, some of the things that went on, nobody could have seen coming. Western Kentucky gets a huge win, 48-21, over historic and bitter rival, and potentially with what news is swirling around now, even more bitter rival. We'll get into a little bit of that later on. Steve, before I get into stats and everything, let's talk about the atmosphere of the game, as we always like to do when we're talking about rivalry games, and specifically when Middle Tennessee and Western Kentucky link up and are playing. It's always a good time, usually a lot more competitive. These games are generally a little bit more close, but the way this one worked out, it didn't lend itself to being close. So I know you were there. I think half of the Twitterverse knows you're there. So talk about it. Talk about, this is a big one. This is always a circle it on the calendar game, no matter what. So What was the atmosphere in BG?
Unfortunately, the attendance was a little bit less than what I would have expected or what we would have liked to have seen. Even though I think they announced 15,000 on hand, but I think that was generous, and I think a lot of it is because we had a really cold week leading up to Saturday, and it got mild on Saturday. And probably by that point, everybody had made their decision. No, I'm not going to the game. It's been 30 degrees all week. And then it was 60 on Saturday at kickoff. So, it was beautiful football weather, not a hugely attended game, but still, a good crowd there that was loud. Middle didn't bring a lot of people, but they're having a rough season, a rough number of seasons, I guess you could say. And just toiling and mediocrity as they do. So they didn't bring a big crowd, but they did bring their band, which I'm sure we'll touch on later. So, that's always fun when the opposing team brings their band. It doesn't really happen a lot unless you're a pretty close rival to each other, distance-wise. But it was a fun game. There was some pregame jabbering going on from the tents down to some players on the field wearing blue. There was some halftime jabbering going on to some players on the field wearing blue. I may or may not have been involved with some of that jabbering.
I knew that was going to be the sentence that came out.
Yeah. I don't want to tell on myself, but, I had a
Neither
couple.
confirm nor deny my involvement.
But I did have a couple former WKU linemen, right guard and a right tackle standing beside me. So I felt pretty secure in my talking. But it was fun. I mean, it was intense. And then the game kind of went, defensively, I wouldn't have predicted what happened. But score-wise, I think the night before on Spaces, I think I made mention that my score prediction would have been 48-28. So got pretty close on that, even though that was an unofficial score guess. But I did apologize for what we were about to do to them. I just didn't know it was going to be so brutal defensively. Kind of seeing that side of our team come out and kind of just be dominant for a change. They've been really good the last few games, but dominant in this game. So it was fun. It was a good victory. And it's always fun to beat that blue team from down in Murfreesboro.
Well, this one turned out to be a real, I mean, I hate to just say, oh, this was a real treat for those that showed up, but man, it was like candy, like if you like turnovers, there were turnovers aplenty. I mean, not you don't want your team turning over, obviously, but if you like to see your defense go out and get turnovers, this was the game for you. No, like I said, if we'd have previewed this game and had an episode about it, there is no way we would have come up with Middle Tennessee having 7 turnovers. I mean, I might have said it kind of tongue-in-cheek because that's exactly what we saw Marshall do against Middle Tennessee, but I wouldn't have thought it would have truly happened, but yet that's exactly what happened. But as I'm digging into my prep for this episode, I'm writing stats down, I'm writing the indicators that we like to talk about, and it was eerily similar despite all of those turnovers. I mean, it almost lends you to say, well, the cliche thing is, well, the turnovers were the deciding factor in the game, but they were, because if, I'm going to tell you these stats and you're like, wow, I kind of wasn't expecting it to be that close. You figure one team's got 7 turnovers, the other team has none. You're probably going to expect a really lopsided offensive output versus the other and time of possession. And that's just not the case in this game. Western Kentucky ends the day with 352 total yards to Middle Tennessee State's 349.
Really weird.
Very weird. A 3-yard disparity versus a +7 turnover ratio for the Tops. Time of possession, Middle Tennessee State 33 minutes and 2 seconds to Tops 26:58. They were outpossessed in the game despite having 7 turnovers. First downs 19-19. But that last final category, turnovers, 7 for Middle Tennessee State, 0 for Western Kentucky. So, yeah, that was the difference in the game. The all-time series now, another kind of feather in the cap. Western has pulled even in the all-time series, 35-35-1. That's 71 matchups. So, in the Tyson Helton era, Western has now pulled even in this rivalry. Tyson Helton has never lost to Middle Tennessee, and to which we will raise our glasses and say, may he never lose to Middle Tennessee. Hear, hear. We talked about the atmosphere. We talked about the band being there. So I want to circle back to that just a little bit before we start talking about stats and who had a great day. Our buddy Hank kind of tweeted at me a little bit and was talking about how you were having a good time. That's something that I fully expected to have happen. And he said his phone was filled with videos of you having said good time, to which I replied, please share. And the video that he shared of you basically directing the Middle Tennessee band is phenomenal in and of its own, because it is one section of all blue and one dude in red. And it's just it's a wonderful video in and of itself. But I want to get the story behind all that, because there's been like the band was kind of, I don't know the word to use. They were chanting at you, or what is the proper terminology to use for how that scenario played out? But anyway, just tell the story.
Well, we were down there in the tents as we were, and the liquid courage was flowing. So as my mouth and lips got looser, every chance I got, I would turn to the band section and I would tell them, they can go home. Bye. Go home. Scoreboard. Well, a few minutes later, my phone dings, and it's from, we know one of the guys up there in the band, Jonathan House. Known him for several years on Twitter. We had never met until I went up there. But I get a tweet tagged in it that says, sitting up here with the band and they're chanting at Monstradamus. And I was like, I said, are they? So we start listening, and sure enough, they're chanting my name. So, I tweet at him, I DM him, I'm like, hey, I'm coming up there. And I tell the people downtown, I was like, I'm going up there. I'm gonna go crash their little party. They wanna chant at somebody, I'll go tell them to go home to their face. So I walked up there, and I met Jonathan. I got to talk to him for a couple minutes. I made my way down to the front railing of the section that they were in, and turned and directed the crowd. I said, "What's up, everybody? I'm Steven." And half of them were like, "You're Steven?" I said, "I'm Steven. Chant at me now." We had a good time. I directed them a little bit. Took a big selfie with all of them behind me. And then one of the blue shirt, security people came up to me. He was like, she goes, "Hey, I think you need to leave. You need to leave." I said, "I'm not going anywhere. This is fun. I know somebody up here. I'm going to hang out for as long as I want."
Yeah.
So I hung out with a little bit, got some good video footage up there for, courtesy of Hank. And then walked down. That was right towards the end of the game. By the time I made it back down to the tent, the game was over. So, it was interesting. And then to find out somebody edited their Wikipedia page and said that I am now
I forgot all about that.
Yeah, somebody edited their Wikipedia page and said, after their annual loss to us or whatever, they are now officially owned by me, my Twitter handle, and the band found out the hard way. So,
Yeah.
As you said, the legend grows.
The legend grows. Yeah. I mean, those are the types of things that, 30 years from now or what, there will inevitably be pictures of these things. We as college football fans and God, it's, we're not students of the game from a player sense, but we are consumers of the world of college football and collegiate sports. And you always see these old photos of things like that capture a moment like that. And you're like, man, that would have been wild to see that. And now you could potentially be one of those moments in this century-long rivalry between Western Kentucky and Middle Tennessee. And that's really freaking cool. That's super cool. Really cool story. I'm glad that kind of all went down. And I had totally forgotten about the Wikipedia page. As a matter of fact, you bring that back up, and I thought for a hot second that you're like, you know what, I'm gonna go do that real quick. And now I learned that it wasn't you. It was in fact some other person that did that. That is amazing. So let's talk about some of these players. I mean, Western had a great day all around. Let's get into the X's and O's, if you will. Bailey Zappi, another great day, 29 out of 50, 281 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. He did also get one on the ground. What is that, like 40 total touchdowns for the dude on the season? I mean, he is just completely tearing it up. Noah Whittington leads the way for the tops on the ground, 17 carries, 67 yards, just 3.9 yards per carry. But, hey, still productive run game. They're getting it in pieces, and it's helping to keep the defense a little bit more honest. Jarrett Stearns, what can be said that hasn't been said? And we still have 3 games to go, at least, because there's also going to be an inevitable bowl game, I would imagine, and a potential Conference USA title game. So we're staring down the barrel of potentially 5 more games in this season. But what can you say? Give the guy the Bolitnikoff Award. He is blowing everyone out of the water in receptions and yards, and it's not even close. Not even close. 11 catches, 110 yards, bringing him to 104 catches on the season, breaking the all-time single-season record for receptions for Western Kentucky. The old record was 99. He broke it mid-game, and then, of course, now
90.
I'm sorry.
98.
Oh, that's right, 98. He broke it with 99. And then every single catch from here until the season is freaking over is just extending what is going to be a near impossible record to break. It's going to be nearly impossible if he keeps up this pace. You could be staring down the barrel of 140, 150 catches, maybe.
Somebody said he's on pace for 150, which would be like the fourth most ever in the FBS era.
In a season, that would be utterly amazing. That's a mark that you don't see at the pro ranks, and they're playing 16 games plus playoffs, and you usually, nobody really gets into that kind of category. You're talking about serious rarefied air now. We're seeing a lot of records, single season records on both sides of this rivalry, Western and Marshall, that are getting set, and it's pretty amazing. But what's odd to me is Stearns is getting a little bit more of the recognition. He's still not getting the full amount of recognition that he deserves based on what he's doing compared to everybody else in the country. Okay, we're going to say that. But he is still getting more recognition, it seems, than Zappe, who is absolutely killing it. And these awards are just like, not enough. You're leading the country in yards. Who cares? You're dominating in, passing yards per game. You're leading or, tied for second or third or whatever in touchdowns. It's not enough. It's kind of lame, to be honest with you. It's kind of lame. Are we just going to play favorites for everything now? We just going to take our cues from the playoff committee and is that how it's going to roll from now on?
He was named a semifinalist for the Davey O'Brien Quarterback Award today,
I did see that. But that's one out of however many so far that he should have been a no-brainer on. It's like this should be the first guy that you're putting as a finalist or semifinalist. Let's call a spade a spade. The dude's dominating, and he's a quarterback. He deserves to be in a quarterback-driven award. Anyway, Mitchell, big game. Tinsley, 3 catches, 53 yards, and a touchdown. David Davis, 2 catches, 45 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Man, he's making him catches count, dude. 2 for 2. All in all, Tops, like I said, 352 total yards, 5 touchdowns on offense. You cannot be mad at. It seems like it's a rinse and repeat type day every week offensively for Western. Now, it seems like they're good for 4 or 5 touchdowns on offense. And if you can throw in some on defense or kick a few field goals, it's just like icing on the cake. Defensively, for Western Kentucky, leading the way tackle standpoint is Jaden Hunter, 11 tackles, 6 solo, half a tackle for loss, an interception, and a fumble recovery. Great all-around day for Jaden Hunter. Caleb Oliver, 6 tackles, 2 solo. Darius Shipp, 6 tackles, 2 solo, and a tackle for loss. But the man of the hour is defensive back Beanie Bishop. Just 2 tackles, big freaking deals. 1 solo, but hey, 2 interceptions on the day, and 1 of those is a pick 6, earning him Conference USA Defensive Player of the Week honors, much deserved. The dude was just balling in that game. Tops allow just 349 yards, 7 total turnovers, 6 interceptions by like 5 different dudes. 5 different dudes. 1 forced fumble and a fumble recovery, but just 1 sack, but it didn't matter because all of those interceptions were just ending it short and sweet. Steve, let's move right into special teams. Braden Arson goes 2 for 2 on field goals, 6 of 6 on extra points. And Haggerty, 5 total punts for 443.8 yard average and a long of 56. Let's get into these grades because we're trying to keep it under an hour, and all these awesome stories we're sharing is pushing us north of where we want to be. Let's talk about the quarterback. What do you got for Zappe this week in the 100 miles ahead?
A little bit less efficient than what we're used to, but it's still hard. When he's around 60% completions, 4 touchdowns passing, 1 rushing, and you're picking it apart because he only threw for 358 and wasn't around 70% like he normally is. So, talk about setting a high standard and a high bar of excellence. He still gets an A. That man had a great game, like he always does. So that man has an A.
Yeah, let me give you one little house cleaning stat there. The offense as a whole had 350 yards. He had 281. So yes, it was an off day, but still, who gives a shit if he goes 4 for 50 if all 4 of those are touchdowns? How about the offense as a whole? Now here's where you get your 352 yards, which is a little uncharacteristic, with especially factoring in 7 turnovers. Of course, one of those goes for touchdowns, but still, it's a lot of extra possessions. I really would have thought, going without looking, I really thought I was going to see like a 600-yard offensive output day. You know what I mean? But what do you got for these guys?
I'm guessing that, just watching the flow of the game, I wasn't paying attention. I'm guessing a lot of those interceptions were just leading to short fields. That's all I can. Yeah, if you went back and looked, I'm sure that would make it make sense. But, the offense, they scored, 48, I think we said. Yeah, 48-21 was the final score. So, running game did its thing. Passing still great. The offensive line, just saw this today. The PFF, they have the highest rated pass protection grade via PFF. So, offensively, man, I love it. The stable wide receivers, the running backs, having multiple that can come out and do their thing. The offense is just going to be an A until they just come out and have 7 turnovers themselves, which better never happen, hopefully. So, definitely an A for the offense, man. They ball every week.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that PFF grade for the offensive line. I saw that too. Forgot to jot that down. We talked about that in the preseason as that being a real position of not of need, but it needed to be like top tier in order for this offense to work the way we would hope it would, and they have not let us down at all. They've been a phenomenal unit, so shout out to those guys for all the pub and all the credit that your quarterbacks and your wide receivers are getting. Just as much, if not more, belongs on that offensive line. They're making that machine move. They're allowing the time for Zappy to make the reads. They're allowing time for those guys to get open. It all starts with those guys up front, and they have just not disappointed all season long. Defensively, man, is this not the best performance we've seen in a long time? And we haven't had we've had some pretty good performances these past couple weeks as it is. But this has been like the cherry on the sundae, this one. 7 turnovers is I say that term rarefied air a lot, but Jesus criminy, when you get 4, 5, 6, and then you talk about 7, yeah, that's rarefied air. What do you got for this defense?
Yeah, it's definitely nice to see the defense, from those first 3-4 games where we were just like, man, they're getting gashed. Man, they're struggling. They're not getting third down stops. They're not creating backfield havoc, tackles for loss, sacks, turnovers. As we've seen, they've moved into a softer part of the schedule away from the UTSA, Indiana, Michigan State, Army, moved into some games that we expected they'd win because we knew our offense would be hard to match with anyone. But the defense has really kind of cut their teeth early and is really making their mark and their impact now and just helping us win games. We didn't have to put up 48 points. We could have put up 22 and won, last week. Last year's offense probably could have beat MTSU yesterday with the performance we had defensively. So, man, the defense is balling. Super proud of them. I really think they're going to be a big deciding factor in how far this team goes as far as continuing to win and playing for that, pretty much playing themselves into a possible title game with UTSA if that's what it ends up being. So the defense gets an A, an A+, an A+++. Those guys, I love to see it. I know we were harsh on them at the beginning of the season, rightfully so. So we're going to brag on them now, rightfully so, because they've earned that with their play.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about with the lead-in. It's an added flavor to this, Western Kentucky team, and that's the rise of the defense here over the last month. Really, since the shootout against UTSA, it has kind of turned around. And I'm not as astute of a observer to go, well, this is what they're doing differently now versus then. But I think it's a lot of things, like you said. The Schedule A has gotten a lot easier. You're not playing Michigan State. You're not playing, Indiana and UTSA. We're playing some teams that you can actually try some things out against, and it won't ultimately cost you. So you have the luxury to figure out what works better. And I think it's also a little bit of guys are settling into their roles. They're developing a little bit. It's not the beginning of the season anymore. Yeah.
Another stat I saw yesterday. If you follow Hannah Lee, I think she's a Rivals writer for WKU. Our secondary grade has gone from like the first 2-3 games we were like 130. I think they're like top 10 now. The secondary PFF grade has just skyrocketed to it. I think number 8, if I'm not mistaken, in total grade now. Obviously, 6 interceptions helps that a lot, but just total grading is more than just interceptions. It's about success rate and stuff, and just total targets, catches, etc. So another huge stat, and just another feather in the cap for the defense. Man, they're balling.
Yeah, they are. I mean, there's no other way to put it. The game from that defensive unit has just flat elevated. They're just better than they were 2 months ago, period. There's no other way to say it. They're just better. And if they're clicking, Rice, which we're going to preview in a little bit, is about the last bit of reprieve until it all has to go right for a stretch. At least a 2-week stretch, potentially a 3 or 4 week stretch. Well, it's not it'll be 3 weeks, and then however long the layoff is until a bowl game. But Rice is where you can afford to make some mistakes still and probably still get a win. But those last 2 games of the season, FAU and Marshall, it's all got to come together. So they're starting to peak at the right time. I don't think they have peaked, but they're trending upward at the right time. Let's say that. Special teams does not disappoint again. The usual suspects do what those suspects do, put points on the board and keep the opposition pinned back. What do you got for the special teams?
Yeah, Haggerty and Narveson did their thing. No botch plays or bad kicks, no missed field goals or extra points. Couple good kick returns on the kick returners, had some good averages. So special teams is an A. They're doing what they're supposed to do, helping flip fields and play the field position game. So love those guys just being consistent, not raising any concern. So they get an A as well.
Yeah, here's one I'm ready for the synopsis on the Moff synopsis, the breakdown, if you will, the coaching effort, because this is number one, a rivalry game. I don't care what they say throughout the week. You circle these games because your fan base circles these games, and you can't go out and lay an egg in certain games in the schedule. Others you might be able to get away with it. Your fan base will gripe and moan for a week until you play again. But there are certain games that you can't lay an egg in, or they get talked about for years, or a whole year at least, until you play them again. And this is one of those games for Western Kentucky. So what about the coaching effort and game plan and whatever else goes into it this week for the coaches?
Well, I mean, I love the defensive side of the ball. Crum continuing to pin his ears back and let those guys be aggressive and make plays. We're pressuring the quarterback a lot more, which is leading to mistakes and turnovers. And then offensively, I'd love to put a little bit more points on them. I know that's being selfish, but I think Coach Helton knows the importance and kind of the history of this rivalry. I mean, it was mentioned in the weekly media availability. They specifically talked about the rivalry and what it means. So, they may be respectful of each other, on camera with a microphone in front of their face, but when they're in the locker room in front of their guys at practice, whatever, dialing in, they want to beat those guys. And I saw it, face to face with players on the field during the game. They were intense and wanted to beat us, even though they were losing by 20, and their band was worrying about me. So, it's nice that it's a fun rivalry. It's somebody that I want to beat every single day, no matter what conference we're in. Another story, yeah. But yeah, I mean, coaching wise, I give us an A. I mean, I wasn't disappointed in any aspect. I want to blow them out tops by 99, tops by 100, if that was possible.
I want to just give some congratulations. This is like a 3-year coaching build up, right? Because Helton for 3 years has been trying to get his program or his team like exactly the way he wants it. And no matter what has gone right or what has gone wrong, he's still been able to beat Middle Tennessee. And that's tough to do, to beat a team 3 times in a row, 3 years in a row, whatever you want to do. And now to, draw this all-time series, 35-35-1, 71 matchups, and we're now deadlocked, that's awesome. So he has taken what was a negative balance for Western and drawn them even. So next year, wherever the game takes place, with whatever the patch on the jersey, the whole story, it's going to be for the opportunity for Western to go back in the lead of this thing in the first time. And I don't know how long. I really don't know. I don't have a clue the last time they led the overall series. But that'll be a huge game. And it chances are it'll take place in Murfreesboro, of course. So, but this is just a great job. They did a great job. I mean, there is no way you'll convince me they were going to go out and get 7 turnovers. Ain't a coach on that sideline that thought that was going to happen. If anything, they were preaching these games are always hard fought. They're close. Every yard matters. Every point counts. All that kind of stuff, because historically they are. And boy, they just had a great game plan, and it worked. Overall, big rivalry win. Toppers keep pace. That's the most important thing. Toppers keep pace in the win column. What about the overall performance for the Tops in the 100 miles of hay?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a clean sweep. I mean, every position, every grade was an A. Big win, convincing win. Never in doubt. Fun overall atmosphere. Good jawing back and forth with some players. All the fans were respectful. The band, we had a good time. So definitely overall is an A. And just love to see kind of the direction that this team's going, as every unit is stepping up and gelling. I really think this season is shaping up to be special.
I do too, man. I really think that this could be, Marshall historically has that late season hiccup, and they can't afford to have it this year. Because Western might not have one. And they're already ahead of some teams, and so this could be a very special season. We could be looking at a pseudo version of 2014 all over again, except now we know who each other is. You know what I mean? Pretty cool. Tops, like I said, moved to 5-4 on the season, 4-1 in conference, keep pace with Marshall in the Conference USA East Division race. They're only one of 2 teams now, the Herd and the Toppers, that control their own destiny. And if they both win out, boy, we're staring at a mucho importante game at the end of November. Let's hope that happens, because that's the way it ought to be. For all the things that Conference USA does wrong, and I really hate that this game takes place on Thanksgiving week, but this could be something that they get right. They've moved away from the game being, the last game of the year a couple of times, and ho-hum, whatever. But this year, I think they might get it right. So hang with us on the other side of this break. We're going to talk about the Toppers traveling all the way out to Texas to play those Rice Owls. It's the Moonshine Throwdown podcast.
Time to throw for Vadiano, and he throws another pick. Beanie Bishop has it. He's inside the 20. Bishop still on his feet. Pick 6.
Toppers got to head out to the state of Texas, Steve, to take on the Rice Owls, a team that I really can't get a handle on. We did a preseason show with Matthew of the Roost, at the Roost, and he gave us some insight on the Rice Owls and thought this might be a different kind of story for the Owls this year, and it's not really panning out, I think, the way that we thought it may for them. Of course, some teams in the Western Division are maybe a little bit better than we thought they were going to be, and Rice being not as good as we thought they may be kind of is lending to all that. But look, the Toppers are going in an away game, and the power index loves the Tops. 89.7% chance to win for the Tops, and they're going into this game, as I've read it today, minus 18. And that's actually, let me try that again. That's actually up a little bit from what I saw it earlier in the day. It was 17.5 earlier in the day. We're up at minus 18 now. Over under 62.5. You do the math. I'm not doing the math. Figure out what you think it'll be. Game, of course, is going down November 13th to Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central on ESPN+. So you don't have to scour the internet for some pirate feed to be able to watch the game this week. If you got ESPN+, watch the game. All-time series for the Tops and the Owls of Rice, 2-0. It's extensive history between these two teams. Now, here's the trivia I alluded to you in the break. Who has that 2-0 record?
What do you mean, as far as quarterback?
Who's the head coach that has the 2-0 record? These games took place in back-to-back seasons.
I guess it was Sanford.
Incorrect, sir. Jeff Brom and Nick Holt.
I remember one was the Mike White game, the first game of 16. I couldn't piece together going backwards who the coach was. Yeah,
that's right. It was Nick Holt in an interim basis was the coach's second go round. I learned that on Wikipedia just a little bit ago, and I was looking up series history. Rice is a 3-6 team this year. Their signature win by far is going on the road and beating UAB just a couple of weeks ago. They beat up on a pretty bad Southern Miss team this year that just can't seem to figure it out in any capacity right now. And then their other win is against Texas Southern early in the season. I mean, this same Rice team has been absolutely boat raced by UTSA. I mean, it was like 45-0. I mean, it was not even close. But here more recently, they did have some closer losses to the likes of Charlotte and North Texas. That Charlotte loss actually was an overtime loss. So, they're starting to be in the thick of these games lately, but it's who they're in these games with that you kind of get a gauge of where Rice is falling. Tops really didn't have that much of a problem with Charlotte. Marshall had no problem with North Texas, and Rice is falling right in there with those guys. So right off the bat, I mean, I don't think we make as big of a deal about Western going to the state of Texas nearly as we do about the Herd having to go and play. They have much more success, and it seems to be a little bit easier of a road for the Toppers in the state of Texas versus Marshall. So that's not really a factor we can talk about. But what are you feeling? What are you thinking about this game as you lead into it? I'm not trying to set you up to say anything here, but I was just glancing down the schedule. Like I said earlier in the recap, it's Rice, then FAU, then Marshall. So how does this Rice game strike you in the grand scheme of things?
Well, I remember that, that joint podcast we did with Matthew from At the Roost, and he really shed a lot of good light on the talent and kind of the turnaround that they're experiencing as far as improving, what they have on the roster. And I know they have talent there, and I know it hasn't equated into wins for them. But I think part of that is you have to crawl before you walk. You have to walk before you run before you sprint. So, I think they're on the right path of getting there. I know that win versus UAB was kind of surprising to a lot of people because I don't think it was necessarily even close. I think they kind of dominated them.
Yeah.
And it was UAB's first home loss since like 2014, I think. Granted, there was a couple invalid years there, but I checked in with one of my UAB friends and was just like, hey, what's going on here? What happened? And he said they had a lot of people that were out of that game hurt. Take that for what it is. Should be next man up. It still went in the right-hand column for them, left-hand column for Rice. 5-10 years from now, we're not going to remember there was a bunch of people hurt. Rice beat UAB. That's what it's going to be. So, what I hope happens is that Western takes this trip seriously, and I think they will, because I think they know how this season started. There was a lot of player chatter. If you're not on this trade now, don't jump on it in November. Jared Stearns was tweeting and some of the other guys, and now they're gaining steam and really rolling towards, potentially a conference championship if they control their own destiny and keep winning. And in my eyes, this is just how I'm thinking. UTSA is ranked number 15 right now, I think, and number 23 in the college football playoff poll. In my eyes, we were 3 points behind them, whatever that was. We were this close to beating them. I don't see there's any reason if we win out that we're potentially not garnering top 25 votes, because that's going to be a lot of wins in a row. If we beat, I know I'm looking ahead, but I really think this is a top 25 talent team that we have in Bowling Green. Even though the win-loss record is not, is not as lopsided to the win-heavy side as you would like it to be, talent-wise and production-wise now versus that initial stretch of the season. I'm not going to bet against this team, and I hope, and I know that they will take it seriously. Heading down there to Houston and not overlook Rice. And I think the defense is going to show up and be impactful. And I think the offense is just going to do what they do and just chunk play and nickel and dime and screen them and good running plays and just put up a lot of points. And Rice is going to announce 28,000 people are there, and we're going to beat them by 24 points, and that's going to be the ball game. So that's what I hope happens.
That's a very accurate synopsis. Rice is going to announce 28,000 people there, or whatever you said. That's hilarious, but that's true. You should not be facing a very hostile environment at all. If anybody shows up, actually, I think you may actually have a contingent that's on par with what Rice is going to be there. You've got a lot of freaking Houston Baptist dudes returning home.
Boom.
So there may be a lot more red in the stands than I think the Rice Owls are counting on, or at least some, Houston Baptist gear, something. But that's just, I bet you there's a larger than usual ticket request, from these guys returning home. This is the closest thing they're going to get to a home game this year, barring a, unforeseen bowl locale that we don't know about yet. But that's my biggest fear, is that Western is looking ahead a little bit to the FAU and the Marshall game. They're thinking, all right, we can make some mistakes and beat Rice, which they can. But this is if there is one game left on the schedule that you can even attempt to call a trap game, it's this one. I don't get that feeling that that's what it is, but this is the only one that can be that, because nobody's looking past FAU. Western struggled with FAU lately, and nobody's looking past Marshall, because Western and Marshall are 1-2 in the East Division, right? Or 1-1. They're not even 1-2. They're 1 and 1A. They each control their own destiny. So this is the game. If something's going to happen that nobody's looking for, it's got to be this one. So let's learn about these guys a little bit. Quarterback Jake Constantine, 6'2", 200-pound senior, 84 out of 131 on the year, 1,059 yards, 5 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and he has been sacked 9 times. He hasn't played the entire season, obviously, or the stats would be a little bit better. There were 3 quarterbacks that have some stats. Even the McCaffrey, the transfer in from Michigan, I think he came from. He's third in statistics in quarterbacks for Rice. So I don't know what's going on there, if he's injured or whatnot, but he's not the guy. And I made sure that Constantine didn't get a bunch of stats early and now is injured. He's the guy that played last week, which is why I'm featuring him on the podcast. Running back Ari Broussard, 6', 215-pound sophomore. Another thing I want to go before I get into these things. We were talking about when Matthew was on the show, and he was talking about some of the youth that was coming in, or guys that they were expecting to make a developmental leap. I'm not getting a lot of that. It's a very mixed bag between seniors and those young players. So The cupboard was by no means bare, I don't think, when this season started. So maybe it's a kind of an across the board developmental step up a little bit. But anyway, Broussard, 6 foot, 215-pound sophomore, 87 carries on the year, 473 yards, leads the way for the Owls in the yardage. 2 touchdowns on the ground, 5.4 yards per carry. Here's where it gets a little weird. Second leading rusher for the Rice Owls is tight end Jordan Myers, 6 foot 2, 216-pound senior. He's got 89 carries, which leads the team, for 334 yards, but 8 touchdowns on the ground. And oh, by the way, he's also the third leading receiver for the Owls with 25 catches for 266 yards and another touchdown through the air. Seems to me, if you've got one dude you might need to slow down, it might be that guy. He seems to be the all-around threat. But from a wide receiver and receiving standpoint, wide receiver Jake Bailey leads the way for the Owls in both receptions and yardage. 5'10", 180-pound sophomore, 46 catches for 576 yards and 2 touchdowns. This Rice Owls offense is gaining 334 yards per game. A little bit more pass heavy than run, 187 yards through the air, 147 on the ground, but they're only scoring 19.3 points per game. The Tops are giving up 29.4. Take that for what it's worth. These numbers are still, skewed a little bit from the early season and a big shootout with UTSA, but they've been a little bit more stingy here lately. So I would tend to think that they're pushing closer to that 19 points than that 29 points. Defensively for the Owls, Antonio Montero, linebacker, leads the way. 6 foot, 222-pound junior, 60 total tackles, 22 solo, 2 sacks, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery. Pretty good all-around player. Safety, Naeem Smith, 5'11", 197-pound senior, 47 tackles, 25 solo, 1 sack, 4 passes defended, and 2 interceptions. A lot of guys that have some all-around stats. And then defensive lineman Elijah Garcia, 6'5", 302-pound redshirt senior, 46 tackles from the defensive lineman position, 17 of those solo and 3 sacks. Last guy we're going to feature on an individual basis is another linebacker, Josh. I think it's Piercy. Josh Piercy, 6'2", 242-pound freshman. 43 tackles, 17 solo, 3.5 sacks, is tied for the team lead for the Owls, and 1 forced fumble. This Rice defense is allowing 414 yards per game, and unfortunately for them, they give it up more through the air than they do on the ground. They're allowing 236 yards through the air, 179 on the ground. Expect those numbers to get skewed a little bit. The pass yardage should be skewed a little higher, and the run yardage will probably improve a little bit. They are allowing 35.9 points per game as it is. Toppers are scoring 41.3. This one could get ugly if they get a turnover or two. I mean, the Rice gives up a lot of points anyway, and the Tops score a lot of points anyway. So a couple of turnovers here and there could really make this one ugly. But based on what we know and what I just gave you, Steve, what do you think are the keys to victory for Western in this game?
Well, I was looking while you were talking. We talked about their points allowed per game. For the season, they're at 19.4. For the last 4 games, we're around 18 points per game.
Yeah.
So we're really, heavily driving that average down quickly with each week that passes, and that defense continues to kind of show their teeth and flex their muscle a little bit. And that's my number one point is, the defense needs to keep balling, needs to keep being disruptive, needs to keep, the quarterback uncomfortable, getting off the field on third downs, creating turnovers. That is going to go a long way towards winning every ball game the rest of the season. We've seen us getting shootouts at the beginning of the season. We've seen us come up on the short end of those. So I think the more the defense grows and is limiting the other team from scoring, obviously your percentage of winning is going to go up. So I think the defense continuing to do what they've done, since the ODU game, will be highly beneficial to winning. I put keep Zappy clean. Hasn't been an issue all season. Don't expect it to be an issue in this game. But keeping him clean, able to make good decisions, and just have an efficient game, I think that has to happen. I mentioned the third downs, getting off the field on third downs, not letting them extend drives, and then creating turnovers. I don't want to be disrespectful and say just get off the bus, but continue to create turnovers. The offense is going to do what they're going to do. They're going to score 42, 45, 48 points. I just think we need to play a good, clean game, execute in all three phases, not look past Rice, go in there, take care of business. It's a business trip. That's how they're going to handle it. And I think they're going to do that professionally and walk out there with a convincing win.
I really get the feeling that that's exactly what that is. You use that term, business trip. And I feel like that's what it is. It's we're not going to go out here and we're just going to go get this one in the bag and go back to Bowling Green and get ready for Florida Atlantic and Marshall. We're not looking past Rice, but we're just going to go handle this real quick and get back home and refocus. My number one key to victory is exactly that. Avoid the look ahead. This is not the time to let the focus lapse at all, because there are still, Rice did go down to UAB and beat a very good UAB team. I mean, let's not fool ourselves. UAB is still a very good team that is fully capable of going in and derailing what UTSA is doing. So avoid the look ahead. Keep your focus. A one lapse, one missed block, one this, one that could just be catastrophic. If Zappy happens to get blindsided and goes down, now you're thinking, holy crap, this just happened with, while we're controlling our own destiny in the East, and we've got the two teams that we need to really eliminate coming in the next 2 weeks. Just maintain the focus and take care of business. Number two, it's real simple. Stick to your bread and butter. What has gotten you here? That's Bailey Zappi, Jarrett Stearns, Davis, big game, all those guys, and picking up a little yardage on the ground just to keep everybody honest. Number three, excellent point with what you said about the defense continuing to progress. That's exactly what I said. I said the defense just needs to take the next step. We've seen them 3 weeks ago and 2 weeks ago, or 2 games ago, whatever, really getting to the quarterback and showing that side of what they can do as far as quarterback pressures and sacks and tackles for loss and things like that. And then now this most recent game, we see them creating turnovers in a completely different way. 6 interceptions and a fumble to boot. I mean, it's starting to get to the point that it's okay, pick your poison. Do you want to test this secondary, or do you want to, take your chances with Juwan Jones and Malone and Chip and Darvin bearing down on you? It's not a good scenario to be in. And my last key to victory is avoid the hang-around play. Teams like Rice can get those plays late or in key moments when you think you've kind of got some momentum, you think you've got this team squashed, and they can get that play that keeps them right in the thick of things, just long enough to maybe have something good happen. So if you can avoid the hang-around play, perfect. I mean, this business trip could go smoothly. A quick flight, a 60-minute game, a quick flight. Focus on Florida Atlantic. That's what you got to do. Who's your 200 proof player this week?
It's going to be one Bailey Zappi. I was tempted to go defense. I'm not going to lie. I was tempted to look on that side of the ball. But I think no matter what the defense does, I think, the quarterback needs to go out and execute and have a good, solid, sound game. I think Zappi's going to have a fine game, just looking at the yards and points they give up. Wash, rinse, repeat. I think we're going to see what we've seen, in all 9 games so far this season. I think Zappi's going to shoulder the load and execute, and Jarrett Stern's going to have a big game. Davis, Tinsley, all those guys are going to show out and have a great game in Houston.
Yeah, it's become a very moot segment of this podcast. It's Bailey Zappi, and again, for me, the connection with Jarrett Stearns has just become basically automatic. It's basically good for 10 to 12 catches if not more, per game. 100 to 150 yards per game, and anywhere between 1 and 3 touchdowns per game. It's become the least dramatic portion of this podcast, and for good reason. When you perform week in and week out, what the hell else do you expect? What's your score prediction this week for the Tops and the Owls?
Well, I'm sitting here. I'm combing over their last 5 games. I'm combing over our last 5 games. What I expect us to do, common opponents. And obviously I don't think they have the firepower to match us at all. And I think our defense is going to be a little bit more stout than some of the teams they've played and have put up some points against, even in losses. So I went with 45, WKU scoring 45, Rice scoring 14. Not quite pitching a shutout like UTSA did, but I think having just a strong, no doubt about it, start to finish, just never in doubt game. Maybe even a backup quarterback gets in there. Who knows? Something crazy happens. But I think we're going to have a no doubter down in Houston.
45 to 14, you say? Well, I don't know what you were doing before. I gave you the 5-minute warning to head upstairs. Right?
Peeking in,
playing some Call of Duty or something like that. I don't know, but I make my notes, and there's my notes right there. Score Tops 45 to 14. We don't really converse about this stuff, but I wasn't even taking into account that UTSA beat them 45 to nothing. I tell you guys, when I look at it and whatever pops into my head, that's what I go with. I don't have a scientific approach. It just looked like 45 to 14 to me. So I'm rolling with that too. That's definitely Tops minus 18. And it's also over 62.5. But I digress. Actually, it's not. It's 59. Wow.
Yeah.
let's take the under and the points. Well, that's that. Final thoughts time. We got a couple of big storylines. We got about 5 or 6 minutes until we can keep under our hour allotted time. Allotted shit. We can go for 2 hours if you feel like it. I don't want to, but we got a couple of minutes still yet. We got some topics floating around, something we've got to revisit for like the umpteenth millionth time, and then something else that I saw. So let's talk about the MAC again. I'm sure you watched. I don't know if you watched. You might have been at work. I watched a little bit of the Middle Tennessee State live stream today, their board of trustees, and that was the boringest. I'd rather watch paint dry. That was so boring. They had this whole build up, and then they were like, "Oh, we're going to have an athletic department, update or whatever," and it was seriously like 4 sentences. It was terrible. But what about this news that Middle Tennessee is now scared? I'm saying scared. They're scared to leave because we have rich and we have poor, and then apparently we have Middle Tennessee State. So they're financially worried about leaving what is Conference USA and what will become Conference USA in order to go to the MAC. Over a little bit of money, and in doing so is potentially jerking the carpet right out from under the feet of Western Kentucky in their bid to go to the MAC as well. What are your thoughts and feelings on that?
Well, obviously it would probably take the level of animosity and dislike between the two schools and fan bases. It would probably take that to a new level.
I would hope.
Call it pettiness, call it whatever. But there's a good chunk of the people that wear red that are ready to go to the MAC. If you peruse Twitter at all within our mutual friends, I'm sure you see everybody clamoring for the MAC and hating on Middle for dragging their feet or having cold feet or looking at short-term dollar gains versus what would probably be a better financial decision for them long-term if they went MAC. My feelings on that are probably a little bit different than the general consensus among the fans, and I've shared that on Twitter. I've shared it on Spaces. My first opinion and first thought when all this started was I didn't want to go to the MAC. I didn't want that geographical footprint. I didn't want those road games. I understand the stability side of it. I understand the exposure side of it. But in my heart of hearts, it's not where I want to do. I don't want to do a 180 and turn that way and recruit that way, and have that be, the future of Western Kentucky. I think this realignment thing, bigger picture, I think it's not done. I've shared that. I've said that. I think there's going to be more people that get plucked and more shuffling that happens, whether that's, 6 months from now, 2 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, I don't know. But I think, I wouldn't want to skip into a new conference, the MAC, in this scenario, and then a better opportunity or another opportunity come available. And I don't want to say you couldn't make the move. Obviously, you could if it became available, but I just think bigger picture, longer term, I'd be okay with staying in Conference USA Zombie and then maybe taking a better opportunity in the future. Maybe seeing what Conference USA grows into. I mean, I know that the schools are bringing in, or they're talking about bringing in and have brought in, right now they're not at a competitive elite level. But there was a lot of teams in that scenario 5-10 years ago, when they were becoming newer programs. Once you get on that same footing and you're recruiting against peers, the high tide raises all ships. And that's going to be true on a competitive front as well. I think we both are like-minded in thinking Western is going to be dominant no matter where they go, MAC, AAC, Conference USA. It doesn't matter. I think they're going to pile up a lot of conference championships. So I'm okay with staying put, looking at the bigger picture, and potentially going somewhere else when more cards and dominoes fall. But I do understand that a lot of Western fans are hurt, bothered, upset, hateful, that middle is dragging their feet, getting cold feet, looking at dollar signs, because their administration is just terrible, and their own fans are ready to fire their president and their AD and their coach and anybody that's within the decision-making process. Middle Tennessee is not happy with them, and therefore by association, Western Kentucky is not happy with them for dragging their feet and possibly causing us to not be relocating, which a week ago, 10 days ago, seemed inevitable and on the horizon. Now it's become a cloudy, we don't know. We're shaking the 8 ball now because we don't know what's going to happen. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand. It's one thing completely if you are willing to make the move and are willing to come up with the funds to make the move. It's a whole nother thing entirely to be like, we're worried about finances. I mean, is that the game you're playing, really? Like, at this level of collegiate athletics, I don't give a crap what conference you're in. If $3 million worries you, you're not in the right game, right? That's like you telling me, like, look, man, I don't have $30 to go make $100. You know what I mean? Like, you can't worry about $30. Like to you and I, that's the same kind of thing. Like, I've been in a situation in my life many times where $30 would have been a big difference maker. But, I've been blessed to progress in life to the point that where $30 now doesn't make or break me. And if you're a Division I FBS university, $3 million shouldn't make or break you. An exit fee shouldn't make or break. You shouldn't be adding how much money are we going to get from the guys that are leaving versus how much do we have to pay for leaving and all this kind of stuff. Because look, it's already been reported that Marshall's not paying that exit fee, so you're not getting that share of the pie. And if they came up with it, if they were able to finagle out of it, that Old Dominion was able to finagle out of it, and that Southern Miss was probably able to finagle out of it. I mean, so what are you going? How much money are you going to really get? That's a terrible excuse. I think also a lot of your fans are PO'd because they saw the light at the end of the tunnel. they saw that as a viable option, and they were starting to get excited about it. Even the ones that were fence sitters were starting to get excited about it. And now here comes Middle Tennessee State, a team that you hate already, jerking the rug out from under your feet, pulling the football aside like Charlie Brown in the old Peanuts cartoons. It's disheartening. I even had a couple of guys who I like and respect. We got on a conversation earlier in the day about the fact that Marshall didn't try to get him into the Sun Belt. I said, how do you know that didn't happen? I've heard differently. I've heard that they did.
I have as well.
I heard that they absolutely did try to get him to come along, and I've said repeatedly and will continue to bang the drum that if I had my druthers, Old Dominion would stay in Conference USA and Western would have came to the Sun Belt with USM and James Madison. That would have been awesome. But, so it was like, well, a couple of things about that, and again, I'm not trying to drag these guys through the mud or anything, but it's not Marshall's responsibility to bring you along. Like, you had the resume, you've accomplished more in Conference USA than they have. So whatever you've accomplished speaks for itself, and you were already there once. So, it's not like you don't have familiarity with the conference and everything, but don't direct that anger towards Marshall. They're not the one having cold feet about going to the MAC. That's Middle Tennessee 100% of the time. But look, and the last thing I'll say about this before we move on is being patient might be the best move. Staying in Conference USA for a couple of years, until this magical 2023 season where all the movement starts to take place, there may be some other spots vacated in those times. Oh, and in the meantime, you do get to collect a little bit of money from exit fees, and you save a little bit of money on entrance fees and exit fees of your own. So, you might be able to collect a little bit of money, fund some capital projects, or set some in a rainy day fund to be able to make a leap when the prospect appears again, and you don't have Middle Tennessee tied to you. So I can see it from both ways. I really can. Last thing I want to talk about, which we talked about once before, and you shunned me off, is we talked about Texas Tech when they fired their coach. Well, now they've hired a coach, and your boy Kitley is up on a short list of apparent offensive coordinator choices again. The head coach, I cannot remember the guy's name. Sorry, I'm just not familiar with Texas football that well. He said he wanted coordinators and assistants that were familiar with Texas and had some ties to Texas Tech, and Kitley checks both of those boxes. He runs the offense that historically Texas Tech has ran. Are you now any more concerned that they could try to make a play for Mr. Kitley?
I mean, it's absolutely feasible. And I've literally talked to people on both sides of the fence about it. With ties to Kitley, literally direct ties to this man.
Yeah.
One person saying, he loves it here, they love it here. He wants to prove, they can do it, without some of these plug and play familiar names. Do it in another season with new names, new faces, and maybe there's a bigger, brighter light at the end of that tunnel. But the devil on this shoulder said, when there's a chance, he's gone. And at this point, there obviously is a chance. All it takes, just like when Clayton White got snatched away by South Carolina, all it takes is the right opportunity to become available, because he obviously had opportunities before that. Just like Braum had opportunities, it just took the right one becoming available for that move to be made. If I'm running a restaurant now making X amount of dollars and another restaurant offers me 2-3 times more money to do the exact same thing in a place that I'm more familiar with and more comfortable with, I'm probably going to take that, or I'm going to entertain the idea of it at least. So absolutely. I mean, there for sure is, I don't want to say a 50-50 chance. I don't want to say a 80-20 whatever chance, but it is within the realm of possible, more so than it was at the beginning of the season, or even a week ago, 2 weeks ago. It certainly could happen, and obviously if it does happen, Western Kentucky will be back to square one offensively, unless they can shift some like-minded people around and keep that thing going. But that's harder, harder done than said. It's not as easy to just teach someone that doesn't come from that direct tree of lineage of air raid that has that knowledge just ingrained in them, like a Kitley does, or all those Texas Tech guys that have come from that tree. So it's certainly possible. Am I scared of it? No, because I think if it does happen, I think Helton and Todd Stewart have the right mindset and direction to make a better hire than what they've done in the past. I think they will look towards a similar like-minded offensive approach to keep us where we're at now versus where we were a couple years ago. So it's certainly possible, though, and it could very well happen.
Yeah. It has to be a little bit more concerning than even when we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, because before it was just like, no. And you're right. There may be a better opportunity. It just depends on what you believe is a better opportunity. Not only is it Texas Tech that's available, but TCU has got a upheaval, and there's going to be some change of foot there as well. So that's two marquee programs in the state of Texas that will be hiring coaches. Take that for what it's worth. But you're right. Even a couple of things about that. If the move does happen and, Kitley is lured away, I find it hard to believe that he would not finish out every bit of the season with these guys, bowl game and all, right? You don't bring in all these kids. These relationships still matter. They still matter. And he brought a good chunk of his offense from his previous stop with him, and you don't walk out on those kids with 2 games left in their career or a game left in their career. You just don't do that. And I think any coach that wants him bad enough would understand that. And number 2, if that move ultimately happens, I think you're also right in saying that these guys have figured out what is going to work for them in Bowling Green. You go find another high octane offense. That's what seems to work. When the Tops have that, they are better. Wherever that comes from, who knows? And now with the transfer portal, the way that animal operates, you're always just one transfer away or one, plug and play quarterback away, as we've seen, several times already in Bowling Green. Mike White did a hell of a damn job, and even Ty Story did a great job. And now Bailey Zappy's doing a great job. So they seem to find the right guys at the right time. And the transfer portal's not going away. It's only getting more and more important. So we'll see how it all goes. Just something we had to bring up. It's still way early in the process, but I saw the name. He was one of 3 guys mentioned for the job as favorites, So generally when there's a little bit of smoke, there's probably a little bit of fire there. So it's still very, very early. But anyway, what do you got for final thoughts as we get the heck out of here this week?
Yeah, ready for there to be some clarity on the MAC or conference situation. It's not really something that has bothered me or caused me worry or stress. Just ready to see it not be chatter.
Put to bed.
Yeah, active chatter on the Twitterverse. And then football-wise, just ready to see those guys continue to just do what they do, and the defense continue to kick butt and grow. And Maurice Crum is just really, really erasing a lot of doubters that he had at the beginning of the season. So really excited. I think these guys are going to have a special into the season. I'm not looking forward to the FAU game, but I know it's going to be special and fun to have Willie Taggart back in the house. And then obviously, at this point, I'm planning on being at the Marshall game again, hopefully staying the night, either night before or night after, and get to see some people that we didn't see last time. So the end of the season for me is shaping up to be a fun run, just because each game is going to have a little bit more meaning, building up to a potential conference championship game, and then bowl game, God willing. But Yeah, I'm excited to see what happens, and I think the Rice game should be fun and a decisive victory.
I'm with you. And this is one to get on a number of fronts. We've talked about it already, keeping pace in the win column, all that, yada, yada, yada. But Tops are sitting at 5 wins. You need to get to 6, right? You got to get to 6 because it's not getting any easier after the Rice game. So you might as well get it out of the way and get that monkey off your back and, look forward to trying to make it to a conference title game. I keep seeing bowl projections, and I'm really starting to get pissed at them because every time they come out, it's like Marshall's in this part of the world and Western's in this part of the world, and nobody's in Florida. There's a million freaking bowl games in Florida, and neither one of these damn teams are getting projected into Florida bowl games. And I ain't got time for that crap. I mean, damn it, there's bowl games in Tampa that I can be at in 20 minutes. I've gone to Orlando to watch the Tops play once before. I'll be glad to do it again. I'll even travel down to Boca if somebody makes it to the Boca Bowl, but I am not going to Myrtle Beach, and I am not going to New Mexico. Somebody's got to get to Florida, for the love of God. Help me out here. I would love to be able to make it for the Moonshine Throwdown, but man, Thanksgiving week, even though the game got moved back to Saturday, which I've recently found out, it's still very tough. I was checking flights and everything, and they're just wearing you out because of the holiday travel of how expensive flights are. But oddly enough, getting the time off wasn't the problem this time. It's, trying to justify to my wife to spend all that money a month before Christmas to go watch a 3-hour football game.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably not going to happen. Even though I love the fact that this game is going to come down to it potentially for the end of at the end of the season for all the marbles. Next year, if it was a little bit earlier, it wouldn't break my heart. Maybe I could go to potentially the last one in a while. Another return trip to Bowling Green, always a good time. But anyway, personal news. I know I shared this with you earlier, but I found out today, for those of you that care and are kind of keeping tabs, my son is in the U.S. Army, and he just got his first unit assignment, and he is going to be at Fort Campbell in Campbellsville, Kentucky, 90 minutes away from BGKY. So
58 miles, baby, right up the road.
There you go. He's going to be right up the road from Bowling Green. At least I know he'll be around good folks. So really proud of him. Super, super proud of him. He was assigned to the 101st Airborne Division, which is amazing to me. Again, on a personal level, I was enamored as a younger fella by the HBO miniseries Band of Brothers way back when. If you've never seen it, just go watch it. The 10-part series is amazing. And it follows the 101st Airborne Division from D-Day all the way up through the end of the war in World War II, when they capture Adolf Hitler's Eagle's Nest, his home in the mountains and all that kind of stuff. And it's just a great miniseries. And in fact, one of the guys in that they follow, one of the main characters, a guy by the name of Carwood Lipton. He was played by Donnie Wahlberg, and he is from Huntington, and he was a Marshall student. And they actually mention that during the show. He doesn't mention that he went to Marshall, but they ask him where he was from, and he says Huntington, West Virginia. So pretty cool that my son is now in that unit as well. It's also the unit that was in Saving Private Ryan, and that's what he's most happy about. He really wanted that. He was like hoping he got assigned to that unit, and that's what he got. So we're all pretty pumped about that and super proud of him, and he's going to be surrounded by a lot of good Kentucky folks. Makes me feel good. So Steve, until next week, take us out.
All right, go Army, go Tops.
Yeah, that's right. Go Army, beat Navy, just like the Herd. Go Herds. It's the Moonshine Throwdown podcast. We'll see you next week.